Hello everybody, my name is Ron Howard and I run a animated RGB lighting show every year here in Fillmore, California, along with my wife Rosa. And we love to do Halloween and Christmas. My journey started in 2015 working with Lightorama. I started in November and had no idea what I was doing. So I bought pre-sequenced music, or I should say pre-sequenced sequences, and I had my first animated lighting show with full wave LEDs. And I remember thinking to myself in December that there must be more that I can do. And then I found xLights. And I saw one video on YouTube that showed how to create outlines on your home using xLights with a mouse. And that's all I needed to see. It made so much sense. And that's when my xLights journey began. And it turned into this over the years. We had our Halloween show last night, so much of this is ready to be retired for the year. And we had a great show. Very few issues this year, a few pixels here and there, but nothing else went wrong other than some crazy weather. We had some wind. Try to create problems, but we handled it okay. And only experience can teach you how to deal with the unknowns of this hobby. And weather is always an unknown, but you just have to work with it. So what I want to do today is talk about my light show, specifically the Halloween portion, and talk about how I secure my props and what the conversion process will be here shortly as we move to our Christmas show from our Halloween show. And I think we'll start with the yard, left and right, and then move to the house. Some people have asked, why did my Gilbert Engineering 300 node arches fall down? They didn't. I laid these down because we have brand new Gilbert Engineering tombstones that I helped design, and I absolutely love these. So decided to lay these down a bit. I have brick under them, so they're not completely flat, just to give a little more room for these tombstones because they look amazing. So this is the left side yard with some triumph tombs. These are 385 nodes each, and I run 2 outputs to each of these tombstones that come all the way back. Well, it used to be all the way back there, but now I have it here. And this is my F-16 V4 in a very old ammo box build. There we go. And that's a great controller. Old school build right there, new school technology from the year before. Fantastic. It's good stuff. I use a combination of Falcon and Colt controllers. I find that these are the best controllers for RGB lighting, for my show, and for my projects. New to the lineup for our Halloween and Christmas show are the new Gilbert Engineering pixel tubes. They're still pixel poles in my layout. These are a lot more dense than what I had before, and these use some pretty strong steel toppers, top and bottom, and then mounted with over rebar using the pipe that's inside. You can make these as dense as you like. These are 400 nodes each, so I'm running 2 outputs for each of the 8 poles to this really cool controller that's been in my show since 2016, if you can believe it. This is the infamous Falcon F-16 V2 with expansion. And this has 4 power supplies, 1 for each side, as I think they should always be configured. Powers each side of the board, so 1 power supply for every 8 outputs. And this is a very, very old build. And I brought it out of retirement because I didn't have time to build other controllers that I will be replacing this with before the Christmas show. But it's just shows how resilient and tough these controllers can be. Take care of them, they'll take care of you. Naturally, most people like to go to new technology because we're sort of conditioned that way. You'll see right up here, I have a couple of Gilbert Engineering praying spiders, 350 nodes each. And I have these mounted with EMT and rebar. If the EMT is thick enough, then I can slide it over the rebar, as you see here. And I ran out of EMT, and I decided just to zip tie it to the rebar, and that works just fine. And I know what some of you are thinking, hey, how come you don't snip your zip ties? Well, there's really no need. No one's going to see it. And if you brush up against this after it's snipped, it doesn't feel good. That'll leave a nice little gash in your arm. Over the years, you'll find interesting ways to control your props for weather. Typically, I would probably put wire and guy wire and secure this so that the wind won't take it down. But this year, I figured I could probably just slide this down. If the weather is severe enough, the whole thing will just come down and hides. You know, my hiding spiders, if you will. There we go. And now, it's not going to catch as much wind as the tall one there might. And so that took care of the spiders. Okay, so let's talk about power for a moment. I know the 15 amp, 20 amp thing's sort of always been this debate, and at some point 20 amp became a big conversation. I didn't want to take the chance as I was growing my show, so I had 20 amp put in on the back side of the left of my home about a year after I put 20 amp in the right side. And this is probably 20 amp here as well. 15 amp will get you a long way, but if you're concerned about popping breakers, and I never did, it doesn't hurt to have 20 amp. There's a cost to that. You'll see here that I have a receiver right here that's being fed from one of my controllers that's in the garage. Okay, and we'll get to that in a moment. But let's talk about how I mount a lot of my props. I'm fortunate that I have wood eaves so that I can drill into it. Some people with facings, with different materials, composites, may not have the ability to do such things, and you have to get a little more creative, especially if you have siding on your home. But a lot of times zip ties and oak string, and oak string is this stuff right here. This is nylon hanging wire. This is great stuff. This is 50-pound rated. And so you put enough of those on your prop, and it's not going to go anywhere. I do the same thing for hanging spiders, and these will all be replaced with snowflakes. And if we look further up here, you'll see I have tucked up in that area of the eave a Culp K8. Next to it is a 10-watt flood. I've had that for, I think, since 2016, 2017. Todd Edward made those for me at a time where people were struggling to make some of those. And you'll see here that I have the backside of my icicles, if I can keep my footing here. I have them labeled. It's always good to label them. I have, looks like a little extra power there. That's for another something I may need to add for Christmas. And I have another tutorial I did on how I mounted the icicles using EMT hangers and hurricane screws. And every year, these things go up and they don't move. So I've been really happy with that. Probably a good idea to always label your outputs on your controllers. Really need to do that. Okay, and then my vert here just sort of secured to this downspout with good old-fashioned zip ties. It works just fine. If you are OCD and really hate the idea of cords hanging out, then secure them. Nobody sees them when the show is playing, and it doesn't bother me. A lot of people will ask, how in the world do you get your lights to turn off? Because they're really bright at night. These two lamp posts, they each have a sensor inside that face my direction here. They face south. So what we do, and Rosa sets us up every night, is we put in a couple of pen lights from Chauvet that you can get from Amazon. They're about 40 bucks each. And this simply is a pen light with a beam, and the beam casts up and takes out both of the sensors, confuses the light thinking it's daylight, and it turns off for our show. Some people have used lasers, red or green, with mixed results. We like using the light. It works just fine. If we look up top here, you'll see as we get toward the roof area, these are the Gilbert Engineering pixel forests. I use sandbags to keep them in place. You can see the wind push them out of place just a little bit. It's a good idea for your center viewing point across the street where we like to watch the show, is to get these at a certain angle that looks best. Behind those, you'll see more spiders. We'll see a vert that has completely turned itself sideways. And I just now noticed that, but when the show's playing, you can't tell. Isn't that amazing? These pixel matrices above come from Gilbert Engineering, and that's 1,150 nodes each. And these guys are great. They, let me see if I can zoom in just a little bit here. That is a G skin that's on there. So that skin, which is plastic, similar to the material of the coral, that comes off, gets rolled up and stored away. Behind it is the printed coral that looks like Christmas presents. There we go. And I have a Culp K32 sitting behind the pixel forest up there that feeds everything up top, including the pixel forest and all the icicles. And while some will joke and say, well, you've run out of room for putting props on your home, I beg to differ. There's still room. It's just not necessary at this moment to put more up there, but I certainly could. All right. Also, in the transition from Halloween to Christmas, I will be replacing these two props with the other props that are for Christmas. I've talked about what weather can do, and as you can see here, if we look up, I have an entire piece of standoff that should be screwed into the stucco. It has come out, but luckily at the top that standoff is holding its ground, so I think we'll be okay. I will fix that when we transition from Halloween to Christmas. So I'm not really concerned about it. You'll see that I have a lot of high density props from Gilbert Engineering. And I do not power inject or power balance anything in my show. I never have. I've never needed to, I've never wanted to. And I prefer to use more outputs than using one output. So a lot of these props will use anywhere from 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 outputs from a controller to regulate the amount of power and data. And this allows me to get longer runs and not have to mess with tapping in with balancing of power. Just doesn't interest me at all. And I was told years ago that I wouldn't be able to run my show if I didn't do that. And I love being told you can't do something because I like to find a way to prove them wrong. And I did. As you can see here, I have sort of a rat's nest. I have 2 new controllers that are going to be coming to me. These will be Colt K32s, and one of them is going to go here and replace all of these receivers. The receiver is a great option in managing your show because it runs from a controller. So it's a distributive hub and spoke approach with data and power. This is great because you can put the data and power in a box and put it close to the point of consumption. Great for tucking in eaves or at high places or in precarious locations where, it doesn't make sense to put an entire controller. I used to have these sitting on top of the Matrix, and this year I put them on the ground knowing that I'm going to replace them with a new controller that will feed everything you see. And if we look up there, you'll see that I've got the oak string with that very dense prop at the top, and it holds it every year, no problem. Cool. As you can see here, there's quite a few wires that will run into my garage through a hole here that Mr. Jason Gilbert himself cut in my house. I should still sue him for that. And all of this comes in, a lot of the wire comes in and goes into one of 2 of my F48s from Falcon controllers. These are great controllers. I've had them for a lot of years. These are the V3 series. There are some ports that are starting to go out here and there every now and then, ports just not getting a connection, so I have to put it on a different port. These will eventually be replaced with newer technology, but I've gotten a lot of years of use from them, and they have been fantastic. Some of the other technology I use, and I'll show you some other controllers. This is a Culp 40D, I believe. This uses a pocket beagle, and I use this for my Halloween show. This offers 10 outputs where the Falcons offer 10, but there are various versions of the Culp line that offer a lot of outputs like this, again, feeding receivers. And the receiver technology has changed considerably in that instead of having just a 4-port receiver that plugs in with a dedicated power supply, now we have 8-port and 16-port receivers for the Falcon and Culp line. So you can't go wrong with either of those 2 controllers. They're absolutely amazing. Industry standards, and they're both heavily involved in xLights and the development and have a long history with our lighting hobby. So I really appreciate their efforts, and these are the controllers I use. I have, for my show, dedicated Raspberry Pis. One does the job of being the show player. That's its only job, which connects to via a network to all of my controllers. I do not run anything wirelessly. Can it run wirelessly? Absolutely. Do I like to? Nope, not when I can wire it. And then I have another one right here that is for my P5 panel you saw out there. It's 56 panels, and it runs an LED color vision card, and then we use this to connect with it using Falcon Pi Player. Another great thing about Falcon Pi Player and the Culp controllers is that on any Culp controller, whether it's this type of technology or a power supply connected to the physical outputs, they're all capable of running Falcon Pi Player, so you can actually power and run data to your controllers, from your controllers, and use it as a show player at the same time. Up here is my EDM FM transmitter. This has been an amazing transmitter since 2016. It came in a kit and you had to solder on the barrel, which scared me in 2016, but I made it work. This thing has been flawless every year. I don't think you can even buy them anymore. And it's what I use. It's perfect. And on top of that, I take an output and go into this little mixer here. And this allows me to dial in anything I need for the FM transmission, which has always been really clean, and go directly into my speaker here that I've had since 2003. That was an electronic drum speaker from Roland. What I highly suggest, whether you're going to use amplification like a speaker or FM transmission, is to pick yourself up a Sound Blaster Play 3 from Amazon. It's like 20 bucks. And it has the 3.5 mil out, and it has a USB-C into your Raspberry Pi. Depending on which Raspberry Pi, the Pi 4, of course, uses USB-C. Pi 3B may use a different type of USB. And this works great. Do know that when you connect this for the first time into your Raspberry Pi, you need to reboot it, and you have to choose the Sound Blaster as an option for sound out and reboot it, then it's working. I see a lot of posts where people plug it in and nothing happens. Alrighty. These are my King Diamonds. Those will stay. Another prop will go in the center. We won't have anything in the garage for our Christmas show that I know about yet. And something else I like to use for outlining things like garages and edges of the home where I'm not using icicles would be this HD trim. This comes from Gilbert Engineering. This is really beefy stuff. I give it a beating every year when I put it together and take it down. I don't have to baby it. And I use standoffs with this, and it just works really, really well. This gadget down here happens to be a very old P10 panel. When I was first getting into the idea of having a matrix, I started with a few panels, and then they grew and grew and grew. And I just use this as a tune to. It has the original Big Ol' Bone black from 2016, and when the power turns on, it starts up the Tune 2 FM 97.7 with a few messages to the crowd, and that's its only job. And you can see here we're already moving things around to tear down the set. On the right side above, it's basically a mirror image of the left side, except the pixel matrices are 2,160 nodes each. Another Colt K32 up there, and pretty much everything else is the same. One note about mounting things. I'm fortunate that I have a grate on my house, so I'm able to use pipe up there and affix it with zip ties to mount these heavy props. And this prop, two of these props, this guy right here, this is the Gilbert Engineering Fusion. I have that on a new metal pipe that's, I believe, 10 feet. And the same thing for the Grand Illusions up here. That's on a metal pipe that goes across. And then I use oak string to attach the Rosa Grande 1,392 nodes onto it. If you're going to mount heavy stuff like this, do your homework and find out what is the safest way to mount your props on the home. You do not want this falling down and hitting you or anybody in your family. So always try to over-engineer if you can. And that brings us to the right side yard. For the Halloween portion, I have Gilbert Engineering mini trees that I simply flipped upside down. Why? Why not? It gets use. It looks amazing in the show. People are always surprised when they find out that these are simply mini trees flipped upside down. And you can see here that I have a pigtail that's unplugged. And for Christmas, well, these will get flipped up right side up, and we put the star attachment on. This is just sitting over rebar. A very simple application. And because we had really crazy, severe winds this last week, I had to come out during the wind and further secure Spooky Tree from GE, because this thing looked like it was going to split in half from the wind. So I quickly took care of that. The skull here, I was worried about these two because I don't have to drive rebar 8 feet in the ground, but at the same time, if the wind is strong enough, the wind is going to do what the wind is going to do. And so all I did with these was remove them from the rebar. Simple process of protecting your props. This was easy. So I took this out this morning just to show you. So on really windy days, I can just remove this. I can do this all by myself. I don't need help. And it simply slides over the rebar here. And that's in there pretty good. But with enough experience, you learn weather's going to do what weather does. For my spooky tree, I didn't necessarily over-engineer this, but I stole this idea from a lady I had a consultation with years ago. I was helping her with her show on the xLights side, and she had shown me some photos of how she mounted, and I should put a zip tie on that, just using PVC in the areas of concern where it might be too flimsy and the wind could shatter it. I've seen a lot of these really over-engineered with a lot of metal on it. And because I break the tree down, I didn't want to do that. I always take these arms off on both front left bottom, right bottom, and they fold into the main body of the tree. I do have EMT here that stays permanently. This again slides over rebar that's in the ground. There we go. Beautiful. And then for my yard controller, I have this beautiful guy here. Oh my goodness, are you gonna open up? Maybe not. I have to put a little muscle in it. There we go. This is a Colt K32. I built this Colt K32. I would love to say I'm proud of it, but I didn't know what I was doing. So it was a kit that came from Wired Watts. There weren't really any instructions at the time, and so some things I learned in lessons was two. One, get one of these ribbon cables, because the SD card that fits into the controllers on the bottom, and I think that sucks, but it is what it is. And lesson two, stop building them, let someone who really knows how to build them. And so my good friend Eric Meyer from Holiday Supply Shop. Sorry, Eric. From Holiday Supply Shop, he does all of my controller builds now. And for all of my projects, he does the best work I've ever seen in building controllers. And because I run a business that requires me to work 9 days a week, it just makes sense to have somebody else manage that for me. Another thing I suggest is turn your sprinkler system on with your show and run it. If your show cannot run with a sprinkler system on, what's it going to do when it rains? We can't control weather, but you can fix problems as they arise from weather. And last but not least is my first dedicated 20 amp that was put in here from a friend who's a commercial contractor. And man, have I heard all sorts of things about the way he did this, but it's approved, it works. And I have some, these guys up here just in case anything were to happen, a little shock buster, just in case. I turn these off every night. I have wireless plugs that I think you used last year, but I always like to walk around my show and it takes me 2 seconds to hit 2 buttons and that side turns on. And then I have another receiver over there. And then if we look up here, I have another receiver up there that's all plugged in to the F48s. And this is just the way I run my show. Do I suggest everybody start off with 46,000 pixels? Probably not. But because of my business and the clients I work with every year, I have many of them that start with 40, 50, 60, 70,000 pixels. They have to build it. They have to poke the pixels. I help them get the show running. And I do this every year, and every show has always ran. My advice, if you're going to do this on your own, is to take it slow, watch a lot of videos, practice, experiment, focus on safety. Because you don't know what you don't know. And the Halloween show is easier than the Christmas show. Because Christmas shows typically mean mega trees. And over here will be a 20-foot mega tree, which is the most dangerous prop in your show because of the weight, the height, the hardware used for it. It's very important to take that prop very serious and be careful. If you don't know what you're doing, you really need to ask and you need to get some help. There are a lot of resources to get such help in the community. It's a wonderful community, and I'm glad to be a part of it. If you have any questions, please let me know. I plan on doing a follow-up video for the Christmas side and a video talking about the software side and some of the hardware and how it works together. This is an emerging hobby that continues to grow and innovate. I hope you found this behind the scenes of my light show informative, and I look forward to receiving questions from you. It's been great. Looking forward to Christmas. You take care.